Today on the news and why it matters, Democratic presidential candidates all in on gun control after the latest shooting in Odessa and Midland. Got a lot to discuss, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez, joined today by Mr. Stubergear of the Glenn Beck radio program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here, as always, too. Mr. Chad Prather.
I don't want to be here. I don't even want to be here. I make people mad every time I come on the show. Can't wait to get to it.
You do. That's why we like it when you're here. And we've got special guest, Mr. Dan Lombardo. He is chairman of the 22 Kill Foundation.
Board. Yes.
Thank you. Oh, chairman of the board.
Yes, ma'am.
The 22 Kill Foundation.
Thanks for inviting me.
I actually am personally triggered by the fact that you're using chairman. I think that I found it very offensive.
The funny part about that, we have an event that I have my first ever chairwoman that's actually running one of our events, so we did use that word.
You're quite progressive over there.
You let females in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm impressed.
She owns a gun.
Oh,
just someone to step out there.
Whoa. So. All right, we've obviously got a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So Relief Factor is there for those of us who have maybe reached that age where you just wake up and you've somehow pulled a muscle from, sleeping. And you're like, oh, that didn't feel like that when I went to bed, and now it does. Or if you've been in any sort of car accident, anything that you're just constantly in pain all the time, and you think that you're just never going to get out of pain. Dan's nodding his head.
Yeah, it sounds like Chad. That's what I was thinking.
Story of my life.
Yeah, there it is right there.
Might I suggest, if you've tried so many other different things, I know people try pharmaceutical drugs. Those are expensive, and a lot of times they have unintended side effects that come along with them. I'm sorry.
Chad usually tries whiskey.
Whiskey works.
Does it?
But it also leads to more injuries.
Yeah.
So you could try whiskey. Maybe that's not always worked well for you. Acupuncture, massage. You try everything and nothing seems to work. Try Relief Factor. It's 100% natural, and it has 4 key ingredients that target the inflammation in your body. They have this 3-week quick start pack, and 70% of the people who buy that quick start pack, they go on to keep ordering more. That's how many people it's working for. It can work for you, and if it doesn't, you're out $20. I would say that that's worth a shot to get out of pain. If you're living in pain, you can go to relieffactor.com, or you can call 800-500-8384. All right, so of course we all know about the shooting that happened over the weekend in Texas, in West Texas. And Stu, you just read, I guess this is a new revelation that's come out about this shooting.
There is some reporting early on now that is saying that they believe he tried to purchase a gun legally through the normal channels, was rejected for a background check. That's kind of been reported. The idea is that potentially he went around that and did it through a private sale. And this will be kind of the lead argument, I think, of people on the left to say universal background checks or something that we need. This is the very small slice of gun sales that don't go with a federal background check. A lot of times it's family transfers. They can happen, in various different ways. But generally speaking, it's the one slice where you can kind of, get around a background check if you were so inclined. At least this is what the left says all the time. Usually it's not the case, but in this case, there is some reporting that it may have actually happened here. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, this is it's obviously a terrible thing. And every time one of these things happens, you kind of have that awful feeling in your gut about just, what do you do? Because everyone wants these things to stop, obviously. I keep coming back to the idea that I don't know that anyone actually is trying to solve this problem. I feel like the people on the left want to get something passed so they can feel like, I guess they did something. But we all know that these things aren't going to have any real effect on it. We had a assault weapons ban from 1994 to 2004. There was no change in the homicide rate. At the end of that 10-year period, there were more guns on the street, not less, because a lot of times when you're going to spend $2,000 for a gun and then that gun's no longer available, you go buy 2 and 3 cheaper guns. I mean, it's not something that actually works, but I don't even think that's the goal anymore. I mean, we have, and we've passed this already, a universal federal ban on hijacking mail trucks. That is all completely illegal, and yet he still wound up going out and doing it anyway.
Also, it is illegal to, in fact, kill people.
It is. That's a ban. That's like just outlawed completely. They really don't like when you do that.
Really high on the federal level.
Yeah, like they're really mad about it usually. And so, like this is not there's no real impact, I think, that can be had by these conversations. The one you go back to, which I still think is, basically the worst crime that I can ever imagine being committed, which was Sandy Hook. Think about that. Here's a woman who did everything right to own her guns. She had them locked up. She was trained in every way, and her son, who had all sorts of mental issues, was not allowed to have them. He kept them away from him. And what happened? Well, he just killed her and then took all the guns and then wound up killing all the kids at the school. Like, there is not, when someone wants to murder a bunch of people for no freaking reason, there is not something you're going to be able to do to stop them. It is going to happen. And I think when we step back a little bit, you wonder what the actual desire is here. Are we comfortable with the outcome of what we have right now, which is overall murders way down, but more prominent examples of this psychotic mass murder? Would it be better if we went with the reverse? Because I know when I was in high school in the early to mid 90s, I was about 4 times as likely to be killed in a school shooting than kids that are going to school today. But those school shootings were not 20 at a time; they were 2 and 3 at a time. Do the parents of those kids, did it matter? I mean, we find that we're going in the right direction, and instead we all sort of lose perspective because we let emotion rule the day. And it's hard to not be emotional. I mean, I'm sure all you guys, same as me, like, you see something like this happen, and it's incomprehensible that anyone could ever do anything like this. But, there's always been examples of evil. There's always been examples of real mental sickness. And the idea that you're going to take away, some guns like Beto wants to do and some others that we've already shown will have no effect. It didn't have an effect here. It didn't have an effect in Australia. It didn't have an effect in Great Britain. Why do we go down these roads? It's like there's like this panacea to be able to say, you know what, well, we did something. And then when the next one happens, they'll say they want to do something else until they can make themselves feel better. It's not effective. And I wish we could get back to the point where we could try to find something that actually would be.
Yeah. You mentioned Beto. He was basically mocking thoughts and prayers. Here's what he had to say over the weekend.
The rhetoric that we've used, the thoughts and prayers that you just referred to, it has done nothing to stop the epidemic of gun violence, to protect our kids, our families, our fellow Americans in public places, at a Walmart in El Paso where 22 were killed, in Sutherland Springs in a church, 1 or 2 a day all over this country, 100 killed daily in the United States of America. We're averaging about 300 mass shootings a year. No other country comes close. So yes, this is f***ed up. And if we don't call it out for what it is, if we're not able to speak clearly, if we're not able to act decisively, then we will continue to have this kind of bloodshed in America.
Chad, Beto, very edgy. Very edgy.
I'm just happy to know that Beto O'Rourke knows the mind of God and knows how many mass shootings have been stopped or haven't been stopped because of prayer. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know this, okay? He's just campaigning now on trying to stay relevant. His big slogan now is "That's effed up." Okay, that's all we hear him say. He's even selling T-shirts.
Yeah, he's got a T-shirt.
He's doing the whole thing. Get over yourself, man. This guy's doing everything he can to hold on. He's just a loser. I mean, he is a loser. In 1929, there was a guy who stuffed piles of dynamite underneath an elementary school and blew up half the school, killing a lot of children. And then he packed his pickup truck full of dynamite. He was mad because he'd lost a city council spot. He waited for the sheriff and the mayor to approach his truck. He detonated the dynamite in his truck, killing himself and those two as well. This was dynamite in 1929 during the Great Depression. Here were people who were suffering from some craziness, and they took it out on innocent people. That's what we're seeing. I don't care if you're going to tie a rock to the end of a stick and bash in their heads. You're going to find a stew set, a way to kill people if you're crazy enough to do that. Doesn't matter if you're using a gun. Unless you're going to drop a magnet out of the sky that's going to suck 300 million plus guns up. We have the guns. You're not getting them back. This moron has consistently said, we're going to buy them back. You never owned them in the first place. You're going to take my tax money to give me my money back to confiscate my guns. No, that's not what's going to happen. My guns have never harmed anybody. We're taking the actions of madmen, and we're saying, well, let's punish every innocent person that's out there. In the 1950s, there was one mass shooting. In the 2000s, there were 42. There was a lot more that can be truly defined as that. What happened between the 1950s and the 2000s? What happened in the last 60 years? There were just as many guns, and they were easier to get.
Yeah.
Why now? Because maybe we've lost things like thoughts, which is caring for your neighbor, and prayers, which is calling on the mind of God in order to protect people and to protect our nation and have grace on this nation. We've lost those things. We've mocked it. We've mocked the faith. We've mocked God. We've taken everything away. We have devalued human life with 1 million abortions a year so that nobody cares about human life anymore. It's nothing more than a protoplasmic blob. It doesn't matter how old you are. If I'm frustrated, crazy, mentally ill, I can go out there and I can kill you. I can become famous for it. So I put the blame on the media. I put the blame on social media because it has brought the absolute worst of humanity to the surface. And we keep glorifying it over and over. Dan Lombardo.
Well, first
No
off,
pressure, but
And Dan has to speak as Dan.
yes,
Yeah.
this is Dan speaking as Dan Lombardo, not as the chairman of the board
Yeah.
of 22 Kill. But listen, I talked with her, hear what he said. But listen, there's estimate 270 million guns in this country. So just say you take, now don't check my math, 20% of that and say that it's, and by the way, there's no such thing as an assault rifle. You know, it's an Armalite is what the technical name is for it. But just say 5%, just say they're going to give $600, $800, because that's what they cost. We're talking in the trillions. So that's not going to work. I mean, the thing is that when you get on television now, you say stuff. I mean, we've seen some of these, the ones way left, AOC being one, that they throw out these terms and these things that have math connected to them. But when you start checking the math, that's when this whole thing disappears. But if we bought back the weapons, I mean, the deficit would double, right? My deal is the real issue is in America right now is mental health issue. I mean, we have really changed. I mean, we have changed to, back to what you're saying. First of all, is my thing was you can't get religion out of the schools. I mean, I remember when I was a child, you went through school and even public school, it was something that you knew that you were penalized. It was part of your learning system was your Christianity or whatever that you believed in. But they've removed all that. And I think there's this disconnection, and especially from the families to the children, with repercussions. And with this mental health issue we have as well, is Americans going around thinking, hey, I can't ask for help when I have a problem. It's almost like reaching out, but reaching out in a horrible way. And like you're saying, is part of the reaching out, they think mentally maybe is, I'm going to make a big impact. I'm going to take people out, you know. But the problem that we're doing is there's no more love in this country. I mean, it used to be where, like you said, love thy neighbor, where we use the term love all the time. That's one thing that as an organization and as myself personally that I think that we need to do is start caring more, that we love the people around us and understand the value of life. But the more that we pull away from these things, the more that we just get disconnected of what's going on in this country is the way I feel about it.
And even with a gun buyback, that's still cheaper than the Green New Deal.
That's true. That is true.
more to come. Back in a minute. Before we move on, you know, Dan, you touched on all of these politicians. They're using these terms, they're using math that doesn't add up, or they're using terms that they don't understand. I want to get, gentlemen, your take on Joe Biden's comments over the weekend, because I do think that that is an important point, that many of the people who are in charge of making gun laws or would-be gun laws have absolutely no clue how they work, have absolutely no clue what the process is. And Biden said something interesting over the weekend in Iowa. Let's watch.
The idea that we don't have elimination of assault-type weapons, magazines that can hold multiple bullets in them, is absolutely mindless. It is no violation of the Second Amendment. It is it's just a bow to the special interest of the gun manufacturers and the NRA. It's got to stop.
Short clip, lot to dissect in
Yeah,
there.
you noticed that.
Stu.
I'm very concerned with these magazines with multiple bullets. I don't know why you'd have a magazine with one bullet. It doesn't seem like it would be really
doesn't
any.
seem efficient
doesn't
at
seem
all.
like there's any point to that at all. I guess we can assume, not that he would ever give us the benefit of the doubt if something like this happened, but I guess we can assume he meant high capacity magazines, which I guess he, in this seemingly does more than one is his high capacity. I mean, it's a standard, left-wing complaint, right? Like this idea that we live in, what year is it, right? Like, is it 1880 where we have to go to like metal forgers to come up with what is a high-capacity magazine? It is a piece of plastic or metal, right? Like that holds, like it's not a couple springs.
Cram the powder down
like,
in it.
This is like think of the drug trade for a second. You can order on the internet now like heroin to be delivered right to your home. You can go we can get whatever we want, right? It's 2019. The idea that you're going to ban a small plastic or metal container that holds bullets is so inane. It's so, again, none of these things would do anything, and they have to know it, right? I mean, they have to know that you can't do that. One of the arguments they make about abortion is with these more strict, cases around the country, that if, let's just say, Roe versus Wade was going to be overturned, which, I mean, we've seen the Supreme Court, I don't think there's any chance of it happening at this current moment, and they were going to ban it in all these states, they're talking now about what they would do is they would just order the abortion pill over the internet, it would be sent in, and they would just have their abortions anyway. But let's ban everything else because that's going to be effective. I think it'd be hard to import things like this. We have 3D printers. 3D printers can print these things up easily. The entire guns can be 3D printed now. These are just these are grabs for relevance. They're grabs for political power. And in the Beto case, it's just desperation, right? Like now I'm going to start swearing on stage like a comedian that's bombing because if I swear enough, people will start laughing. Well, they are laughing at Beto. And the idea that this is a mindless thing from Biden is true. I mean, what he says is usually mindless.
Well, and you remember, this is Joe Biden who said, well, what you do is you just take your shotgun and you just fire both barrels through the door. Get a shotgun. But, if you don't know gun facts, don't join the gun debate. And that's the problem. You brought it up, Dan. Don't call it an assault rifle or an assault weapon. Anything I assault you with is an assault weapon. I don't care if I throw this, whatever this Glenn Beck Moss crap is. I'm just saying, someone came to me and they said, well, you don't know the ins and outs of an abortion procedure, but you argue for being pro-life. I said, well, that's apples and oranges. I'm not going to go in there and start talking to you about how an ultrasound machine works, because I don't know that. Yes, it's used in the process of abortion. The same way, I can argue against abortion. We can argue against mass shootings, but we're talking about the tools used here. I'm not going to use this ultrasound machine to negate abortion. I'm going to negate abortion on the fact that it is murdering an unborn child. Same with mass murder. Now, don't start coming over here and nitpicking the instrument and the tool that was used to do it and saying, oh, it's that one's fault. Hey, we're heading into the age of red flag laws. I'll just tell you, I got guns. I got AR-15s. They've never shot anybody. And God forbid they ever do. I hope they don't. But I'm not mentally ill. I'm not crazy. I'm not a nut job. And Texas, by the way, has now loosened the laws. The same day or the day after this happens in Midland and Odessa, Texas, out in West Texas, they loosened the law. So now you can carry guns in certain places. You don't have the same ramifications. I don't think they loosened it enough. I don't think they loosened it enough. I still contend that our schools should have retired military, special ops, people who have been psychologically vetted, passed the test, hire them, $60,000 a year. Put them there at their school. It is their school. They run that school. I'm telling you, they protect that school. There's a lot of unemployed vets that are out there. They need purpose. They need meaning. Put them out there. Let them do these things. And let me tell you, if you say, well, we can't afford to do that. You go up the hill to Allen, Texas. They got a high school with a football stadium that looks like a university campus.
It does.
They have Burger King and Pizza Hut in their cafeteria. Why? Because they got private donors who make these schools, these crazy nice places. Tell me that a community cannot rally around $50,000, $60,000 a year to employ these guys who have the skills and the training to go in there and protect our kids. I'm all for it.
Yeah. Dan, he also mentioned, Joe Biden, that it would not violate the Second Amendment.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to do. At the end of the day, it comes out to be this is, I think we've learned because I think no one that has done a crime, these gun crimes, that they could have bought a weapon. They're buying the weapon from somebody else. And there's tons of weapons in the marketplace. Like I said, the estimate was 270 million guns out there. So you can get a gun. I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, look at this. Mexico, people don't really realize, but Mexico citizens, because my father-in-law is, the largest gun he can have is a .22. Anything bigger, you have to sit there, you got to get with the government, you have to get approval, all this other stuff, and look at all the gun violence they have. If you want a gun, you can get a gun. I mean, it's end of story. The thing that aggravates me is that there's so many politicians that are describing these weapons. I think it was, I was watching TV, it was an AR-15, and they were saying like how hard it kicks, and they were doing all these things, and I'm like, you can stick it on your head and pull the trigger. It's a little bitty bullet, it's about as big as a 22. They don't kick, but they're trying to make the weapon worse than it is. Like it has a grenade launcher that it comes with, and you get 6 free grenades.
Well, it's a weapon of war, right?
But the fact of the matter is, even hunting weapons are changing, and so a typical person who wants to shoot and enjoy their rifles, most likely they like to long distance shoot, and the typical rifle, which is a bolt action rifle, you actually have a little clip that gets in there. There's 3 bullets in there, and you kind of go, well, wait a second, I don't want to get off of my rifle. So a lot of these hunting rifles are now made the same way, with the same format, which is that it's just a clip goes in, which is a magazine, and you can have 6 rounds in there, but you're still deer hunting, you're still shooting long distance. It's the person is the problem. It's the mental health issue that's going on in this country that, I mean, I'm telling you, it's one of the largest problems that we're going to deal with. I mean, look at the stress between veterans and first responders now, because the left is so far on them about the job they're trying to do. We're creating a lot of stress and a lot of drama, and this is just more of it.
Yeah, Stu?
You know, as America's only conservative vegetarian, born in New York, grew up in Connecticut, I am no gun guy. I don't know that much about it. I'm a gun owner. I know how to fire my guns. I go to the range, but like I'm not a gun guy. I don't have a huge passion for guns. I don't know how ultrasound equipment works either, and I don't need to know all the details to make moral arguments about these things. But the one thing that we as citizens are supposed to have some moral responsibility to understand is the Constitution of the United States. We're supposed to be able to defend the Republic, and it comes to protecting life, and it comes to protecting your ability, your God-given right to protect yourself. These are 2 things that are fundamental to the founding of this country and continue today. And so often people are like, well, but I really want this thing to be true, and I really want that thing to be true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You still have to go through the process of what we have here. Our system is very important. It's the reason why we've been such a successful country. And so many people just disregard that when it's inconvenient. We have to go back and focus on those things, and that's going to lead us to the right place.
So what you're saying is it's not the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed until the government thinks that particular guns are really scary.
Right. Or unless Beto wants it, the Beto clause.
That's effed up.
Oh, okay. We're done for if that's the clause that's in there. We'll be back.
Luckily, his name's not Beto, so he doesn't actually can't. This
it's
particular,
non-enforceable.
Right, exactly. Absolutely.
Take it to the Supreme Court.
He's one of those Mexicans with a 22.
You should see that.
Crowded like that.
Before we go into overtime, Dan, make sure to tell everyone where they can find you.
Okay, so 22 Kill, you can find us at www.22kill.com. We're a 501c3, and real quick, one thing I'm proud of, 83% of what we make goes straight to programs, which is higher than a lot of the charities. So we're really proud of that.
Yeah, you guys are doing a lot of good and necessary work, so thank you for that. A lot more to come. You know, we're talking about what's going on here with everyone just being so quick to give up their Second Amendment rights. I wonder what the people in Hong Kong think about that. Let's talk about it coming up next. You don't want to miss it, BlazeTV.com.